everyone. I'm Jillian Turner along with Kellyanne Conway, Jessica Tarlov, Brian Kilmeade, and Joey Jones. It is 5 o'clock here in New York City. This is The Five. Well, we are awaiting President Trump, who's expected to speak any moment now with the Secretary of War and Navy. This is the U.S. is pursuing yet another oil tanker near Venezuela. We will bring that to you live as it begins. But first, Vice President JD Vance did not hold back at Turning Point USA's annual America Fest in Phoenix this weekend. It was a packed house. A record 31,000 people attended the first Turning Point convention, obviously, since Charlie Kirk's murder. The event aims to energize a new demographic of conservative voters ahead of next year's midterms, young conservative voters. Here's the vice president urging the party to be, quote, big tent by expanding the America First movement. Take a listen.
We are going to kick their next November and every year after that.
President Trump called in to thank supporters.
We're all, every single one of us, on the same team. President Trump did not build the greatest coalition in politics by running his supporters through endless, self-defeating purity tests. He says, make America great again because every American is invited. People of every faith come to our banner because they know that the America First movement will make their lives better.
Well, President Trump called in to thank supporters. He could not resist, though, taking a playful jab at his son.
I just want to say that nobody did more for me than Charlie, and there's nobody better than Erica. And I just want to thank you all, and I hope my son's doing a good job representing me. Otherwise, I'll have to say, you're fired, Don, you're fired.
The biggest surprise of the night, though, was superstar rapper Nicki Minaj. The one-time Trump critic, now turned conservative, apparently sat down with Erica Kirk to have a heart-to-heart in which she praised the president and she told young Americans who they should really be looking up to.
I have the utmost respect and admiration for our president. And if you're growing up in a world that tells you it's taboo to say something that the masses don't agree with, that's not okay. Oh, Gabby Poo, it only gets worse from here for you, buddy. It's the end of the road for you, my love. For young men, don't be new scum.
A lot of people were surprised by Nicki Minaj's appearance there at Turning Point, but you would only be surprised if you weren't paying attention to the news lately, Brian, because she has very publicly in recent weeks thrown her support behind President Trump. She's very into this Nigeria religious persecution issue, which is important to her, and she has been thanking him publicly for taking it on.
But here's what surprised me. Everything you said is correct, but I did not know she was so read into all the issues. Like, she had such well-rounded opinions about President Trump and JD Vance that she thought and was so eloquent in the way she expressed it. There was none of, I remember when she was American Idol judge. It was kind of irreverent. And I watched her look almost like a candidate. So I think it's really going to matter a lot. And also she said, hey, people can evolve, people can be wrong, people can change. So I really felt like not only is she supportive of the abuse of Christians in Nigeria and trying to end that and admiring that Donald Trump's trying to do just that, but I think that she bought into the whole culture. And it makes me wonder, what about 50 Cent? He's also said positive things, but backed out of finally just saying, hey, you know what, I'm all in on Trump. Snoop Dogg evidently got along with Trump before he ran, and then he pardoned one of his friends, and he said some positive things. I think in terms of this being more than just an appearance at Turning Point USA, I actually think this could be the beginning of people taking a fresh look at the president instead of using the filter of the media to tell people what they think of the president. But I thought the bigger story at Turning Point, too, was the battles between Bannon and Ben Shapiro and then and other people, and then JD Vance trying to say it's a big tent, we should all get along.
Well, and Kellyanne, to that point, the reason why the vice president was trying to unify people is because he's going to need every vote in that room. He's going to need every, MAGA movement vote he can muster if he is indeed going to prevail in running in the next cycle.
Yes, in 2028. But they also need those folks and their manpower in 2026. And I think the most impressive part of the whole weekend are not the individuals at the podium. It's the increase in the number of Americans, of young Americans who are participating in our political system for the first time. And not because of their age. You might say, well, if they're 18, of course it's their first time. This increase of 31,000 people showing up right before Christmas to be there. I met Charlie Kirk when there were about 12 people around the table. His donor, Foster Freeze, said, "You're not going to believe this guy." And I still don't believe him, God rest his soul. But what Charlie did was he was able to combine the mission, the message, the messenger, the money, but most important, the manpower. And I think what Turning Point USA represents, Jillian, more than anything, are the ballot chasers, are the get out the vote, are you looking at a colleague or a classmate in college and they say, "What are you doing? Why do you care about all that? Isn't it right wing? And you have the opportunity to be the ambassador for the conservative movement, for freedom and liberty in this country, the way Charlie and Erica have done. So for Vice President Vance, he is going there. I thought it was very uplifting, cohesive, collaborative, and unifying his message. He can burn it all down too. He's good at that. You know, he's good at being the partisan warrior. But I felt he was sort of straddling that I am the deputy to the Trump-Vance administration's policies this great, successful year. And I also, like you, represent the future. He's 41 years old. His wife is 39. And so he was telling everybody that this is your American dream. And I got to tell you, for young people to have supported President Trump going from 36% in 2020 to 47% in 2024 against Kamala, who's supposed to appeal to young people, is nothing short of remarkable. Turning Point USA and Charlie Kirk deserve a ton of credit for that. Building on that into the future requires gatherings like this. I don't really care who was Zooming who, really, because they're doing it for, I guess, ideological reasons, but commercial profit as well, and clicks and kicks. I care very much that these people feel they have a seat at the table and that they're going to be able to participate, not just in 2028, in the 2026 midterms.
It's also, though, undeniable, Jessica, that Charlie's murder has, I don't know if you can say it has caused this, but it has certainly led to some fracturing, right? And a lot of that was on full display over the weekend. You had different parts of the base arguing about everything from Israel policy to Ukraine. You have, as Kellyanne mentioned, the most high-profile podcasters in the movement, like openly warring with one another and calling each other names in front of these 31,000 attendees.
Yeah, and fighting over whose subscribers are real and whose bots. And Candace Owens is kind of the conspiracy theory linchpin, I guess, of all of this, that everyone is then having a fight over, you know, Megyn Kelly, Ben Shapiro, Steve Bannon. You know, it didn't feel particularly unified and collaborative to me watching as an outsider. Obviously, the politics that were on display at Turning Point are not my politics. I did, though, find it exciting to see so many young people there, high schoolers who had opened up chapters in their schools after Charlie's horrible assassination. And, you know, again, not my politics, but I think the country will be better off for more people being involved in politics. And I think that that's a big success story. JD Vance's speech, though, was on substance pretty incoherent. I mean, the idea of saying everyone is invited and that this is the greatest coalition of supporters, and then also saying in the United States of America, you don't have to apologize for being white anymore, and that we're a Christian nation doesn't feel particularly inviting to me. And also, Kellyanne spoke about the coalition that Trump put together for 2024, and it was a huge achievement. I mean, I sat here and ate proverbial crow for what feels like days, months, years. We're getting there. But today, Donald Trump's approval with Gen Z voters is at 29%, and he's only at 32% with Latino voters. It has completely swung back to the usual levels that we saw in the 2020 election when Joe Biden got 81 million votes. He has a lot of work to do, and you saw that coming to bear also the November 5th elections in like New Jersey and Virginia, right back to where we started. So those voters were on loan for one election. He's going to have to do a lot of work to get them back. Over 10% unemployment rate for Gen Zs right now.
I thought it was a great speech. I thought it was very smooth. I thought it was right to the point conversation.
Okay, everyone is invited. We're a Christian nation.
Well, I think you could both be true.
Majority Christian nation.
Which is
Judeo-Christian.
He didn't say Judeo. He said Christian nation.
One thing we're not is a radical Islamic nation, and anybody who's voiced against that right now, especially.
You've seen a lot of Democrats being like, America is a radical Islamic
You know, I didn't see a
nation.
lot of Republicans out saying free Palestine and from the river to the sea.
Zero.
I didn't see any saying continue the intifada. I didn't see any of them saying things like that. I fought those wars against the radical Islamists. The people of this city watched their friends die in the buildings against the radical Islamists, and we immediately had a president who said we were wrong for using the term radical Islamist. Radical Islamists just went on a terror spree over the last couple of months, and I think when he says that, what he's saying is now more than ever, don't you dare be ashamed to call yourself a Christian, to be openly Christian, to espouse both Republican ideas and Christian ideas, because a lot of times those are the same, and that's okay. I don't think he's challenging the separation of church and state. I don't think he's demonizing Jews, Muslims, or Hindus, or anyone, but I think he's saying specifically we're coming out of a season where being a Christian, white, heterosexual male was demonized for no other reason than the fact that you existed, and it's time that we put those types of things aside. And I think from that perspective, he made a good point. I do think there's trouble if you're looking at the short term. The energy of America Fest is not going to directly translate into the midterms. I mean, you're talking about the two main themes being start a family and connect with God, which I think are absolutely fantastic, but that's 30,000-foot view. JD Vance's, even his speech, well, sorry, we're going to move to something much more important than what I had to say, but the point is, Republicans in Congress don't have much opportunity to latch on to any of this and say, vote for me.
Right. They do have turning point action with that. That's going to, they hoped.
Click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You won't get it anywhere else.